And then you look at, the Joe Exotics and the Doc Antles. And yes, I think obviously the media and the documentary is going to make out everybody in the documentary to seem a little off, a little crazy in that sense. But of course, on their end, like it turns out they're not only abusing their animals, but like just an overall bad environment, the people that they're surrounding themselves with, the situations that they're getting in on the business side as well, I thought was very strange. And on your guys' end, you didn't even like realize what, they were filming when they were filming it originally, right? When it came to producing that whole documentary?
No, we didn't, because when they came to us, they said the name of it was going to be called Stolen Wildlife, and that this was going to be the Blackfish for big cats. Did you see Blackfish?
I did, actually, yeah.
So the end result of Blackfish was there were so many people who didn't know how horrible it is that they were ripping these orcas away from their families and keeping them in these tiny concrete pools and then making them perform, and how they would die so frequently because they were so miserable in captivity and you just can't give them enough space, and all of the reasons that they showed in Blackfish for why we should not have orcas and dolphins and all of these amazing intelligent creatures in concrete pools. And it caused a change. SeaWorld said this is the last generation of orcas they're going to have in their facilities, and they stopped their shows right away. And so that was the show we thought we were working on. And when everybody else was seeing the same thing we saw in 2020, the teasers coming out for Tiger King, the producers of the show we thought we were working on had told us, when they would ask me questions about Joe, I'd be like, why are you asking questions about him? And they said, well, he's one of the guys that's breeding these animals, and he says all this nasty stuff about you, so we just want to give you a part of it. And they promised he would be like 5 minutes of this show, and the show would be all about the issues and what people could do. And so when the trailers started coming out for Tiger King, we called him up and we were like, who's working on that show? Because usually anybody who's working on any kind of big cat show comes to us. They need footage, they need quotes. So it was like, we don't even know who that would be, who would be doing a show like that. And then they didn't want to talk to us anymore. And so we sat down and binge watched it just like everybody else did and discovered that it was them. And we could not believe that that was the end result of 5 years of giving them all the information they needed to create a Blackfish, a really important film. And this freak show is what they came up with instead. So that was really disappointing.
I mean, and that's very manipulative, kind of in a sense, and like I guess that's what they say about Hollywood too. I mean, that's at least what I've grown up being told about. It's weird how they literally, like, you didn't have any sort of say in how that was gonna go. Like, even after they made it, like, I figured that you'd have to have like some sort of consent from the people that were involved in order to create it that way.
I mean, they did get consent forms, and the consent forms was they could use whatever they filmed, but they didn't give us any control over what their end product was, and sure didn't give us any clue as to what that thing was going to turn out to be, because that was nothing like what we were pitched was the actual show.
What exactly were you and your husband thinking when you sat down and watched that for the first time? Because again, like, it probably was the most watched documentary in 2020, because it came out literally when the whole world went, nuts with the pandemic and everything.
Yeah, I think that created a perfect storm. And here's what I had a lot of time to think about this. And it seemed to have come at a time, of course, when everybody had just gone into lockdown. Everybody was scared. We didn't know what was going to happen with our jobs or with our families. Were we all going to die from this thing? And everybody was looking for somebody to blame for the fact that we were all stuck in this situation. And here comes Joe Exotic saying, everything in the world, it's Carole Baskin's fault. It's effing Carole Baskin's fault. And I think that's why that whole thing with the memes and everything took off. Even though people didn't, consciously think that I was responsible for COVID, I think there was this need to find somebody that everybody could hate on at one time. And that I became that poster child for that, based on the way that I'd been portrayed in Tiger King. So I think it was kind of perfect setup for that. But as far as watching it, I mean, we binge watched it because there was a podcast that Robert Moore did in August of 2019. So Tiger King came out like 6 or 8 months later.
Oh, it was like the Wonder something, right?
Wondery, yeah.
Yeah, right.
And so the way his podcast went, and it was about the same thing. It was like 7 or 8 episodes. And it starts out the same way Tiger King did, where you're meeting all of these crazy people, and he painted it as this feud, which is bizarre because I've never even spoken to Joe Exotic, but he painted it as a feud. And then at the very end, he said, but you know what? I found out that I was being lied to. And here's the truth about all these people that are breeding and exploiting these animals. And here's the truth about Carole. She has this beautiful sanctuary. And, he came clean at the end of it. And he said the reason that he wanted people to kind of go down that path with him, the way that he showed it, was because that was the way he was led into it. He believed all of these people, the Antles and the Tabros and the Joe Exotics, he believed them, and then he found out they were lying to him. And so he wanted the public to see that same kind of trajectory. So we sat through Tiger King thinking, okay, they're going to follow that same thing. They're just copying Wondery. And they never got to the point where they said, but all these people were liars and none of these animals serve any conservation. They didn't get to any of that. Instead, they left it hanging on, well, this is just all horrible and nothing's ever going to change for the animals. And then it was the end. And then they said, well, we're going to do this like 8th episode or 7th episode. So we sat through that, and that was just awful, that thing they did where they were like talking to people from Tiger King, but it didn't answer any of the questions that were raised in Tiger King. So even when they had the opportunity to fix the problem, they still didn't do it.
That was my biggest takeaway after finishing that. Like at the end, it was more about, this feud between Carole Baskin and Joe Exotic. And it was not about the animals at the end, and even a few of the people that were interviewed on his side were like, this has gone far enough when it comes to being about two people that it shouldn't even be about. It should be about the animals that, again, are either losing their lives or being abused or are currently in the wrong situation that they shouldn't be in, which I thought was and again, like from the media side, that's what makes good TV, especially in a time where everybody is stuck in their homes doing absolutely nothing. They need something to, again, binge watch and look at and analyze and see like, okay, like, oh, I saw this. I know exactly what's going on now. Like, I feel like a lot of people jump to the conclusions just like, oh my God, like Joe Exotic, Carole Baskin, Doc Antle, what they're doing, whatever. And like in your case, again, like, cause you had to, again, go through this stuff with the media back then. Now it's a different time, 2020, as soon as this gets out, it's the biggest documentary that there is at the time. And people are probably coming at you left and right, social media, interviews, all of this stuff, kind of reopening that door, whether it was stuff regarding big cat rescue or controversies or all of this stuff. Do you think that this, it obviously gave you guys publicity, but at the same time, like you said with the documentary, there were a lot of negative aspects to it?
Even though overall it was just, I feel like such a betrayal, the way that I was portrayed and the things that they did to us, I really feel like it turned out exactly as it needed to, because I believe everything, no matter how horrible, including COVID,
right.
Everything is happening for a reason, and it's all really for the good, and we need to find what that good is in it, and so that we learn and grow from it. And so I think the good that came out of Tiger King being so popular, one was, you're right. I mean, when my husband disappeared in 1997, that was a very different time than it is from now. And so having people look at it with fresh eyes and going over the evidence again and all of that, I think has been very helpful. And maybe we will find out something that we weren't able to find out then. Maybe something has changed in somebody's life since then, that they were willing to talk now that wasn't willing to back then. So I think those are all positive things. And I think the platform that I have been given by the media, by virtue of the fact that everybody wants to rehash Tiger King, they have at least given me the opportunity to try and bring it back to the animals and to say, that was a dumpster fire, and I'm glad you enjoyed it, but here's what's important. We're going to lose the tiger in the wild if we don't do something like right now. And the very first thing we have to do is stop the cub petting, because that is what's driving all of the breeding, discarding, and that's growing the market for their parts and for their derivatives that are putting pressure on the wild population. So that's why we have to stop it right now. And so I don't think I ever would have had that level of exposure to the media had it not been for being portrayed as some villainous, money-grubbing, tiger-loving, husband-killing bitch.